Open Secrets has published a series of allegations of criminal activities within the South African National Defence Force. The organisation alleges there exists a rogue unit that is responsible for acts of torture and murder. According to Open Secrets, the group comprises the Special Forces Brigade, the Military Police, Defence Intelligence and Defence Legal Services, and operates with impunity. Now, the SANDF reportedly instituted a board of inquiry headed by Brigadier-General John Moorhouse to investigate complaints of alleged criminal activity within the military. As part of the investigation, the inquiry is set to have heard testimonies from dozens of witnesses on corruption and abuse of power in the military. However, 6 months after the conclusion of the inquiry, the report has not been made public, and neither was it tabled before the Portfolio Committee of Defence. Open Secrets Director Hennie Van Vuuren joins us to discuss this. Hennie, thank you for joining us and welcome again to the programme.
Thank you, Leanne. Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers.
I mean, it's shocking to say the least. I mean, we're talking of allegations of detentions, of torture, of masked soldiers, suffocation with black plastic bags. I mean, this really does give the impression of apartheid-style abuses of power by soldiers. Hennie, perhaps maybe let's start right in the beginning and perhaps give us a background of the story and how your organisation came across this information.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. You know, Open Secrets investigates human rights abuse, economic crime, and we had been looking at initially the shipment of the Lady R, the vessel that arrived from Russia at the end of last year, and we identified a Special Forces owned vehicle which was parked quite close to the Lady R at the time. And we started to join the dots, so to speak, Leanne. And I just want to be clear, that didn't lead us in the first instance to torture. In fact, it took us to an abduction of an alleged member of the Islamic State, Abdullah Abadiga, and his bodyguard at the Mall of Africa in December last year. And that, again, the Special Forces, we believe, were certainly, we know they were on the scene by their own admission, but we believe they may have been involved in the abduction of Abadiga, which in itself would be a crime. And then, you know, moving forward, the Hawks started to investigate this, Leanne, and that's really important because the authorities came in, they started doing the hard work, and a very courageous policeman by the name of Frans Matipa, Lieutenant Colonel in the Hawks, investigated this matter. And his prime suspects, and that's very clear from court orders he was seeking just days before his death, was the Special Forces and Special Forces operatives who were suspected of being involved in this criminal activity. And about that time when we were investigating then ultimately the assassination now of a very senior Hawks official who is investigating the military. And there's nothing ordinary about that, Leanne. It's something extraordinary that we've seen a top cop assassinated, 2 bullets shot in the head while he's driving on the highway north of Pretoria on the 6th of August this year. The only people who can do that are some of the top marksmen in the country. This is no ordinary, if you like, murder. This is clearly a political assassination. And so our investigation continued, and whistleblowers then approached us. And what we started to piece together was that some of the same Special Forces operatives who had been involved, that Matipa was investigating, we found them on the scene of another series of crimes. And that's when this investigation led us to these allegations, horrendous allegations of torture and possibly the murder of individuals at the hands of the military and at the hands of Special Forces in particular. Goodness
me. I mean, these are the stories, unfortunately, of movies. This is like a movie script opening up in front of us. I mean, terrorism organizations following to malls of Africa's, shootings on highways and moving vehicles. I mean, Frans Matipa, as you mentioned, he, of course, is he was the investigating officer, the Hawks police officer. And we know he obviously was investigating some instances that perhaps maybe could have led to figuring out what was going on. Do we know at this point what exactly he was investigating? And what has the investigation into his murder brought about?
Yeah, I mean, before we even just, move on to some of the torture allegations, I think it's important to recognize Matipa was a brave, from what we understand, dedicated police official who was frankly just trying to do his job. Nothing completely extraordinary. He literally just went to court and said, look, here are the suspects. I need to understand where they were on the day of this abduction. What do their cell phone records tell us, and how we can trace them. Of course, if you like, and the risk to Matipa is the moment, if it is true that special forces were involved in these crimes, it is this special forces and those around them are a golden thread in the story of abuse that we've picked up. And he was busy pulling that thread in. And obviously the potential to bring the whole house of cards down was very real. And what we're seeing now is it was not only that particular criminal act at the Mall of Africa that the special forces are alleged to have been involved in, but it is torture and murder of other individuals where special forces, the military, and in one instance we believe even the chief of the army, the current chief of the army, General Lawrence Mbata, were involved in taking over policing activities. So they were basically starting to go and find suspects alleged to other crimes, bring them into the military base, never handing them over to the police, and torturing those individuals. And that is crossing a very serious line that we haven't yet seen, certainly, thankfully, in a free South Africa to date. And it is a very serious violation of the South African Constitution.
I mean, your organization is saying, and I know that there's a comprehensive, and I urge viewers to go out there and read this. I mean, it's published on the Daily Maverick. It's a 4-part report that you've put together, Hennie, on your findings here. But your organization says these abuses date back to 2019. How many cases are we talking about here?
Yeah, so Leanne, as you say, I really do urge viewers to look at this Russian doll series we've published in the Daily Maverick, because it presents the evidence. What we have been able to describe, at least based on 2 different sets of sources. The one are individuals within the state who've come forward with information, who were present when one particular torture and murder took place, and in another instance, a source who we've named, Pulen Coro, was the focus of a torture by the military, and he has now come forward. We've used his name in those investigations, and he's told a first-hand account of what happened to him. Those are, we believe, could be just the first of a number of other instances. There's talk of further tortures having taken place. But in the first of those 2 instances, a man called Spamandla is picked up in early February 2020 while the military is trying to find weapons, rifles that were stolen from a military base. Now, the military can investigate what happens in the grounds of a military base, but as we can appreciate, the military can't leave the military base of Thaba Tshwane, for example, the military sprawling HQ south of Pretoria, and they can't just drive into neighborhoods where civilians are living and go and pick up people. In this instance, and in other instances, we believe that's precisely what happened. The one particular instance, a man called Spamandla was picked up. He was kidnapped from a McDonald's in Kempton Park on the East Rand of Gauteng, driven back to Thaba Tshwane, taken to the military police bar, and he was tortured overnight. And as you say, this was torture that included beatings, which included waterboarding, to the point that at 3 a.m., the man we know only as Spamandla took his last breath, and according to the sources who were present, the Special Forces lead operative who was leading the torture, a man by the name of Colonel Sunnyboy Piniwambi, said that his mortal remains should be taken to Spescorp, which is the Special Forces headquarters, only about 4 kilometers away from Thaba Tshwane, Leanne, and he should be buried there. And so, you see layer upon layer of criminal activity that's taken place on that one evening. And the same in the other instance, the man called Pulen Coro, only a few weeks later, he is lured to Thaba Tshwane military base under false pretenses. He's held there for 5 days. He's beaten so badly that he still has tremors today. He can't see out of one eye. And importantly, right now, at this moment, he's in hiding because he fears for his life, because only in the last days, pressure continues to be placed upon him and his family. These are not historic accounts. These are accounts of very powerful people who are in positions of authority within our democratic institutions, and we have not seen accountability for their actions, and that puts people's lives at risk.
It certainly does, and I mean, we're also talking here to the head. I mean, to the Lieutenant General Lawrence Mbata, as you mentioned, who is the chief of the South African Army, who's been implicated and fingered in all of this. Has there been a response from any of those that have been implicated at all?
Yeah, so we certainly think it's very important, Leanne, that we give an opportunity for those who are implicated based on the evidence we are presented. We gave all the parties an opportunity to respond, including General Mbata, including Rear Admiral Mpoto, who's implicated as the head of military police, and of course the SANDF, the chief of the SANDF, and others. So there's about 10 parties that were named, and others who are implicated in torture directly. We have not had any response. The SANDF said as they will consider a response once they've heard all the information. We are saying that's simply not good enough. And that response, if the implicated parties don't want to speak, that's their opportunity to do so, which they have not, haven't taken that opportunity. But Leanne, what's crucial is that the politicians need to speak. We need to hear from the Minister of Defence. We need to hear from the Minister of Police and the National Commission of the Police. If the army is overstepping and taking over policing functions, it's how the rule of law certainly crumbles, and we return to a stage where the military is involved in our daily lives and ultimately our political lives. And of course, Leanne, the last point to make is the President. Yeah. The President is the commanding chief of the South African National Defence Force. He and his colleagues in cabinet must now intervene, because it isn't going to be some lowly colonel or major in the SANDF who's going to be able to change this. It has to happen right at the top, and that's a political intervention that's required to ensure that the good soldiers, of which there are many women and men in the SANDF, are able to do their jobs, protect the Constitution and protect the democratic rights of all South Africans. Right now, that's at risk of not happening, and that has to change.
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. Thank you for joining us. There is too much more to ask you. That was the Open Secrets Director, Hennie Van Vuuren. Is there, just in one answer, is there an investigation taking place at all into anything right now? I know the DA did ask for one. Are they investigating it? Do you know?
Well, just quickly to say, we understand into Matipa's murder, there is an investigation that needs to be speedily resolved. And secondly, as you mentioned at the beginning of this insert, Leanne, that the SANDF has had a board of inquiry, the Moorhouse board of inquiry. We are saying it's important that this must now be immediately made public and must be the beginning of a much more detailed investigation into criminality in the SANDF.
All right. Hennie, thank you. We got to say goodbye. Thanks for that. Go to Daily Maverick, have a look, read it for yourself, and you'll see exactly what Hennie Van Vuuren is talking about.